What's up everybody, Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles here. Today I'm going to cover a video topic that I've been getting a lot of requests for, which is Burmese Python feeding rate, and just kind of guidelines and intervals for you guys. So I want to first start off by saying that all of these feeding guideline videos are exactly what they are, guidelines. So guidelines are something that you can follow, but they might need to be adjusted as you go. And it's really important to know what an adult snake should look like, know what the snake should look like through all phases of its life. So that's going to be key in any feeding intervals, any feeding guidelines that you guys do, is that they're guidelines and they're meant to be adjusted. So none of this is, if I tell you feed it weekly and the snake's looking heavy, it might be time to pull back on it a little bit. So here we go. So for as a baby, let's call it maybe 0 to 1 year old. I like to feed my Burmese pythons pretty similar to how I feed my boas. A meal that's about the size of the girth of the snake once a week. And I'll feed it like that for about the first year. Again, give or take a week or so. If it's looking a little bit heavy, I might lay back a week. If it's not looking like it's putting on enough weight, I might increase it just a little bit, but I'll increase the meal size. I won't increase the frequency. So I'm not going to be feeding these things every 3 days, every 5 days because the snake looks hungry. It's important to remember that snakes are programmed to feed, to grow, to eat. These things are predators. And although they can be good pets for us, we need to be in control of monitoring their diet and their feeding. So I think that's going to be key, and I'd like to mention that first. So again, 0 to 1 year, weekly or so, about the same size as the girth of the snake. So this snake's probably about, I've had this snake for a while. It was a slow grower, slow starter on food. She's probably about a year, about 4 or 5 years old now at this point. Very small for her age, but that's okay. She's a healthy snake. She's doing really well. It's just an albino Burmese python, nothing really special, but a beautiful snake. So I like to feed about weekly, girth of the size of the snake. Once they get about a year old, I'll pull back on the feeding a little bit, and I'll start feeding them every 10 days, every 2 weeks or so. I might increase their meal size. So I'll give them something. If you feed a prey item that's the girth of the body, that snake is going to have a visible lump in it. If you feed it something a little bit smaller than the girth of the body, there might not be a lump. So that's kind of the guide that I use in terms of feeding intervals and things like that. And when I say feed it something the size of the snake or feed it something that will put a lump in it, you're going to feed it something that is exactly the same size as the snake, because when it swallows it, its ribs are going to expand, its muscles, everything will expand, and it's going to leave a pretty good sized lump in it. If you feed it something that's larger than the girth of the snake, you risk the chance of it regurgitating, and they also take a lot more time digesting. So it's important to remember that every time a snake eats, they go through a lot of stress in their internal organs, all the things that build up. It's not like us where we're programmed to eat every few hours or a couple times a day. These things really are only meant to eat when they see food. And in the wild, there's not a lot of opportunities to see food. So when they find it, they eat it. And that might be a really large meal. They'll go into a burrow somewhere, hide, and they'll really get a chance to digest it. So from 2 years, or from 1 year to maybe 3 years or so, I like to do the every other week. Again, adjusting up or down a week. If it's looking skinny, I might do every week. If it's looking heavy, I might pull back, do every 3 weeks. I might skip a meal. It's really about changing up the diet. I might vary the prey size. I might go a little bit bigger, a little bit thinner sometimes in terms of the prey size for the snake. So it's all about being able to adjust and adapt to what we're doing and to understand, again, what the snake is supposed to look like. So this here is a pretty, very muscular Burm. She's not fat. I probably can't pinch fat on her. This is skin that I'm pinching here. So that's a good guideline. She's getting into the racks behind me, but use that as a general template. Once they get to be about 3 to 4 years old, they're still growing, but I consider them adults at that point, assuming that they're a large size. I consider her an adult, and I'll feed her like an adult. So I may feed again every 2-3 weeks, and once they get to that point where they're almost full grown, or where I would call it an adult breedable, that's when I'll start to pull back on the feeding, or I will just continue to maintain that 2 to 3 week feed rate. And you really have to use your eyes at that point, because some snakes, I could pull out a big Burmese python. If you guys remember the big Burm that I pulled out at the end, I might be feeding her weekly, specifically when it comes to breeding season. because I know she's going to go off feed for the breeding season. So she may go 3, 4, 5 months without any food. I don't force her to eat. That's not a big thing to stress out about, but you do have to make sure that they're proper weight if they are gonna fast for that amount of time. And when these snakes are in breeding season, they will put themselves into a dangerously low weight. So it's important, if you are breeding, at least in my opinion, to bring them up a little bit heavier in weight prior to breeding season. If you're not breeding, just maintain them at the perfect weight the whole time. Shouldn't fluctuate their temperatures. Don't force them into the breeding season. This snake, again, as long as I don't mess with her temperature, she's going to be a perfect weight the whole time. And it's going to be a really nice, healthy snake. So I wish I could give you more of a guideline to follow, and I could say from this age, from this age, from this age, you should feed these size prey at this interval, but it's really not that simple. So it's actually a really simple concept, but you have to do some thinking on your own. There's no chart to follow. Once they get to be full-grown adults, let's call it 5 to 10 years plus, I personally like to feed it something that's the size of its body, the girth of its body, monthly. Maybe I'll increase that if they're looking a little skinny, or they're not really moving or growing or shedding. If they're looking heavy, I might decrease the prey size. But me personally, I don't like to not feed anything, whether it's a boa, Burmese python, anything. I like to keep feeding at least once a month. I don't think it's natural for them to go longer than that, even though science may say that their digestive system goes into this kind of overdrive as they're digesting prey. That's all fine and it's all true, but you have to remember the prey size. So if I'm feeding this thing something that's 2-3 times as big, and it's going to put this ginormous lump in its body, yeah, of course that's going to put a ton of stress on the snake. And if you continue to feed something that size every month, every 2-3 weeks, it's probably going to kill your snake. They're going to have this overload of caloric intake, and they're just going to become these big, messy, overweight, gross snakes. So that's important to keep them healthy, and that's really it. I wish I could give you more of a guideline again, but that's what I do for my snakes, and that's what I'm covering for you guys today, because that's what I got a lot of requests on. So hopefully this video is helpful. I appreciate you guys following again. I did get a new camera, so I don't know how the sound is going to be. I don't know how the video quality is going to be, but we'll check it out. If it looks like crap, I'll buy another camera, return this one. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you like this girl, and keep following, keep subscribing, drop me some comments, give me some more topics. I have a whole list of videos I'm going to try to catch up on, but I appreciate all you guys watching, following, subscribing. Hit the bell notification too so you see when I do some new videos. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.